All right, Matthew chapter 24, the Olivet Discourse. The disciples want to know how this whole thing's going to work out, like the unfolding of history. Jesus tells them that first, some stuff's just going to happen, and that's just the world being the world. You don't need to panic about that. Then he tells them there's going to be something that we talked about a bunch over the last week called the abomination of desolation. Looks like it involves the temple, profaning of the temple somehow. And then things are going to start warming up through a difficult period of time toward the return of the King, the return of the Son of Man. And that's the stuff we're looking at today in Matthew 24. I don't know where we started, like verse 21 through, call it 28. I'm going to have Jeff play some music, and we're going to pick it up where we left off yesterday. Picking it back up with the text in verse 26, Jesus says, "So if anyone tells you, there he is, go out in the desert, don't go out, or here he is in the inner rooms, don't believe it. For as lightning that comes from the east is visible in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there's a carcass, there the vultures will gather." Two images that he uses there. One is about this lightning. We were sitting down here in the basement the other day, and we were kind of having this weird snow squall kind of blizzardy thing, and we got a little bit of lightning with it. And even though all the shades were drawn and we were looking at other things, that little lightning flash against the snow, even though it was very far away, we didn't hear any thunder or anything. Like, everybody ran to the window. It was like, oh, dang, that's crazy. Snow and lightning, that hardly ever happens. It's nuts. You couldn't miss it, even though it was forever away and obscured by fog and snow and all the other weather that was going on. So Jesus would seem to be saying that, like, look, there's so much debate about this. I get it. People want to know when the Messiah is going to come. I get it. You guys want to know what the timeline is going to be and when the Messiah is going to come. But like, let me just reassure you, you'll know it when you see it. And I suppose in keeping with a motif, with an illustration that I introduced in this conversation back at the beginning about giving people road directions. You're going down the road, you're going to see the big red barn, the Mecca albino squirrels, you're going to see all of that stuff. Just keep going. There's another thing that happens when you give directions to somebody and they're going to see a lot of things that look like the right place. Sometimes you'll be like, look, you can't miss it. Like there is no way you will drive by this thing. When you get there, you will know. In Kearney, Nebraska, and we used to live in central Nebraska. I worked at the university there. And on the interstate, I still don't know that I understand it. They built something called the Archway Monument. And it's got like birds or eagles or something sticking out of the sides. It looks like the front of a Viking ship there. And then it looks like a quaint metal die-cut diorama on front of it. And you have to drive like 20 miles out of the way, slight hyperbole, to like double all the way back and get to this completely impossible parking lot. It's labyrinthine. Like it's a neat idea, but it did not work out. And the people of central Nebraska know that it did not work out. But if you were giving somebody directions to the Archway Monument and they're driving along I-80, it'd be pretty easy to be like, look, no, you're not going to confuse it with like overpasses and stuff. You'll see cement overpasses. Like, just no, trust me. When you see the Archway Monument, you will know, oh, dang, that's it. That's not like the other things. And it would seem like that's the same kind of directional advice being given here. Hey, when the Son of Man shows up, you're not all going to be like, is that him in the desert? Is that him in the candy van without the windows? I mean, maybe it could be. Look at his beard, sort of, a little bit. You're going to know. It's going to be crystal clear. And then that last little remark at the end, wherever there's a carcass, there the vultures will gather. This has been read a few different ways over the years. I think probably the best read on this is to think of it in the same way that we think of Jesus' remarks about like red sky at night, sailors delight, red sky at morning, sailors take warning. He's like, you guys can look at the weather and be like, oh, okay, we see what's going to happen. How come then you can't see what's going on around you and read these signs? This would seem like an extension of that. Like, hey, you might not be able to see the carcass there, but if you look up in the sky and there's a whole bunch of vultures circling, you all know what it means. There's something down on the ground that they're fixing to eat. And so then I would feel comfortable adding a Jesus paraphrase likewise to that and being like, hey, in the same way, when the whole Son of Man returning thing happens, when all of this abomination that leads to desolation, when this stuff goes down, it will be increasingly very obvious what is going on, and that obviousness will culminate with my return. And in the next passage, he's going to get more specific about exactly how Kearney Archway Monument, unmissable the return will be, and how that maybe a little bit makes some of this debate and jockeying about exactly what this phrase means and that phrase means, it makes it maybe a little bit moot. It brings us to a point when we look forward and see how obvious this return is supposed to be. I think it is depressurizing, and it helps us to say, okay, clearly the point of all of this stuff that Jesus just gave us in Matthew 24 is be ready. This isn't the end of things. There is an unfolding. You don't get to know the exact day or hour. It will be very evident when it hits the culminating moment of the unfolding. In the meantime, be faithful and also be prepared to suffer, because that might be part of the deal with you living under a different set of values than the values of the world in which you still live. Thank you for doing podcast Bibling with me. I think you're really cool, and I think this is ludicrously fun to work through and to work through carefully. I really do appreciate that you hang out with me. That is an honor that is never lost on me. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.